session.
Are we being recorded?
Hi, Alex. You ready for us? Thank you.
Yes, next meeting. Yeah, next meeting.
That's fine.
Greg, ready?
Alex, you ready?
Yeah.
Just 1 second, Mayor, when I get the notice on YouTube.
Now, we think we have good sound. We checked everything.
We did a test. Our tech came in, tested everything, reconfigured everything. We should have no issue. Just waiting on the YouTube notification.
We can all speak in booming voices.
Yes.
Clear and concise.
It should be better sound tonight.
Okay, it's live on YouTube, Mayor.
Okay. Alex, you ready?
Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome to the March 12th, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Township Committee. Can I ask everybody to rise for the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are returning from executive session, so we are going to jump right into the hearing of citizens. Mr. LeConte, would you mind reading the guidance?
Members of the public are now welcome to come up to the microphone to address the Township Committee. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not scheduled for public hearings tonight. Those present may step up to the microphone to be heard. If you are watching via Zoom, you may speak during any of the public comment sessions by following the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. Whether in person or online, when you are recognized to speak, please mind the following procedures. Please say your name, spell your last name, and give the name of your street. You do not need to give your street number. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Rather than use any of your time answering questions, the Township Committee will wait until you finish speaking before responding. There are 2 public comment sessions on tonight's agenda. Each member of the public will be limited to 1 comment of up to 3 minutes during each public comment period. Written comments submitted to the Township Clerk before 3 p.m. today will be read during the public comment sessions. Written comments are subject to the same guidelines as oral comments. Duplicative written comments may be summarized rather than read in full, according to guidelines issued by the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. And we did not receive any written comments today.
Thank you. Do we have anybody online who has their hand raised?
We do not have any hands raised.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Okay, so
I think you missed someone in the back.
I will close the hearing of citizens. Okay, so we have a packed schedule. I'm just wondering, did you want to start with the budget by chance?
I was actually going to ask you, it's your preference, Mayor. I can start with the budget.
Why don't we do that?
I figured everybody else will be wanting to hear that first.
Yes,
So.
let's do that.
All right, so I put the presentation up on the big screen as well, and just, there we go. All right, so this is a presentation on the 2024 municipal operating budget. The theme for this budget is called Securing the Future. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. The Finance Committee this year is made up of the Deputy Mayor, Michael Choi, Committee Woman Jen Rowland, myself, the Administrator, and our CFO, Debbie King. The Finance Committee had 2 new members to the municipal budget process. That's the Deputy Mayor and the Committee Woman, but you wouldn't know it from sitting in meetings with them because they both had a lot of insightful questions and some very valuable input to the process, and so I want to thank you both for that and the support that you gave Debbie and I in crafting this budget for you. The CFO, Debbie King, she's a township employee of almost 25 years. She's got incredible knowledge over 25. I was trying to, I don't want to stress that. Over 25 years. She's got a lot of great knowledge on not only the budget, but the town's finances and the history here, and especially our operations, and helped me as well, and the finance committee in forming some of the decision making that went into this. And I also would be remiss if I didn't recognize our finance clerk, Ed Davenport, who helped us out. He's not here this evening, but this was his first year sitting through the budget process with us. He started working for the township. 2023 was his first full year. And so this year I wanted to get him part of the transition and building the bench for the future. So he sat through the budget process. He's an incredible resource to us, and also gave a lot of assistance to Debbie and myself in not only updating and reviewing the budget materials, but also helping me with this budget presentation. The budget process looks a little bit like this. It's not too different from last year. Other than last year, I called it the budget of transition and transformation, and that was because it was my first budget in Chatham Township, and it was a lot of new processes and a lot of new templates and a lot of education, both for myself and the department heads, into how that process would work. This budget started a lot earlier, as I promised last year it would, and this year, preparing for 2025, it would start even earlier than it did this year, but we're getting closer to what I think is an ideal timeline. So it started in November to December with the budget process, beginning with a prior year review and also having the department heads submit their requests. They also reviewed their expenditures and for the previous year to help inform them for 2024. January and February of the beginning of this year, that's when the finance department closed the books, and we held department head meetings to go over all of their requests on the operating side. February 2024 was also the start of our finance committee meetings after the department heads gave us their requests. Debbie and I solidified those after our meetings with them, made any reductions and adjustments, and we presented that to the finance committee. And then we had some more meetings in March with the finance committee, and the first 12 days of this month was review, final adjustments, and quality control of the budget. Tonight is the initial budget presentation. March 26th, we are hoping, with the approval of the governing body tonight, to do an introduction resolution for the budget and do another presentation that would essentially be a repeat of this, maybe abbreviated. We're looking to do April 9th, further public review, opportunity for the public to review the documents, scrutinize them, send in their requests, questions, and get those answered. And then April 23rd will be the required public hearing and then adoption of the budget. 2023, as I said, that was the theme of the budget, was transition and transformation. There's still some transition and transformation going on this year, and that happened this year, but we're finalizing that. This year, I call it a budget to secure the future. And why do I say that? So I'll cover four things. Personnel. In this budget and for the rest of the year, what we're looking to do is round out the municipal workforce anywhere there's vacancies that needed to be filled that are critical, but we're not adding any new staff in this budget. Our construction office will be fully staffed by the end of the year, hopefully even sooner than that. But what we're looking at there is a team that's all less than a year old for the township, all very bright individuals with experience and running things a lot more smoothly than they've ever been before. We've got a new pool manager starting this year, a new administrative assistant in administration, and we've also had a few retirements and resignations both in the DPW and the police department that we're hoping to fill those vacancies as well. And the budget accounts for all those changes. So it's a continuation of that fresh blood, ideas, and perspectives, which gives us an opportunity for new efficiencies and improvements here in the township. Some of the operational changes I want to go over is a reduction in the footprint of our municipal offices. That's part of an effort to consolidate, so that way in the future, when we look at a municipal facilities realignment project, we have a better handle on the space that we need and what we can work with. It's also helping to improve the workflow and organization of the offices. It's especially apparent, I think, in the administration and finance offices and also the construction offices. We've made a switch to an entirely cloud-based voice over IP phone system, which has proven to be more cost effective than what we had. It's less equipment for maintenance and upgrades, less equipment for failures, which we saw a lot of in the last 2 years. It's much more reliable. It's accessible remotely, so employees can work whether they're at home due to emergencies, weather conditions, or if they're out on the road. We have some employees that are out in the field, and this gives them the opportunity to stay in touch. We've switched our IT vendors at the beginning of this year. It gives us a more agile and responsive team to any of our issues, but it's also coming at a further cost reduction because we've got a flat rate pricing, whereas before we had hourly billing and the team was not as efficient as they could have been. We're also we've reduced and are continuing to reduce our digital hardware footprint and upgrading connectivity. That's going to make our staff, our building, our operations more resilient, and it's also cutting costs through the elimination of some legacy services and upgrades to our internet connections and our computing. We've also moved our file storage and continue to do that, move our file storage to the Microsoft Cloud, which is also helping, again, all part of this theme of securing the future and looking to being a municipal government of the 21st century. Some financial notables I want to touch on. Our fund balance and our surplus. Through this budget, it's going to be the healthiest it's been in 6 years of the history that I've reviewed. It's more than double the 2018 levels, and it's in line with the best practices, as well as recommendations by municipal auditors, financial advisors, and it also meets the township's policy of being between 10 to 15% of total expenditures. Negotiations with various banks this past few months are going to secure us interest rates at 4% or better for our accounts, as well as short-term CD options at 5% or better. This is going to help our revenue for 2024 and beyond. Unfortunately, though, there's some negatives. We have some our shared municipal court expenses went up almost 45% this year due to one municipality pulling out of the shared agreement. Our pension costs are seeing an almost $100,000 increase this year. Our liability and medical insurance both went up about 15% this year. And the revenue in our construction permits is dropping significantly. There was a boom during the pandemic here in Chatham of building, of rehab, renovations, and 2023 revenue was 61% of the 2022 levels. So what we anticipated this year was about $150,000 less in revenue than last year. So that's something that needs to be made up through the tax base. And then finally on capital planning, I just want some highlights there as well. The appropriations for our capital improvement fund this year are going to be set at $900,000. That's higher than it's been in a while. Debbie, any off the top of your head, highest it's been in what, probably 5 years or more, I think.
Yes.
Right? Which is good. That's higher than it's been for a while, but that's an investment into the future that minimizes the need for more borrowing. The 2024 capital is largely focused on public safety. We have to place orders for 2 firefighting apparatuses for our volunteer fire departments towards the end of the year, and those are both coming in at a total cost of about $3 million. We've got about $400,000 for vehicle and equipment for public works and police, and another $500,000 in road improvements. We'll go into the capital details next month. So, where do your taxes go? A lot of people have heard about this, have seen this, but it's still worth repeating. What we're talking about here, what this governing body, what the Mayor and Township Committee vote on, what Debbie and I work on putting a budget together, is for 16.64% of your tax bill. That means for every dollar that you pay in taxes, less than 17 cents of that dollar is used to fund township services. But why you see the Township of Chatham on your tax bill is because by law we're obligated to collect the other 83 cents for the county, the schools, and the library. So the only thing that's within our control is that 16.64 for the municipal and that 1% for the open space tax. Oh, a little too far. And so, quick overview on municipal budgeting. What we look at are 2 columns, our appropriations and our revenues. Appropriations, those are all the expenses that we anticipate. That's made up of our salaries and wages for the personnel. What's known as, quote, other expenses, that's the categorization, for the state. That's your supplies, your electricity, things like, paper, leases, contracts, contractual obligations. What I refer to that is actually negotiating bargaining unit contractual obligations, contractual obligations like our recycling collection, contractual obligations like our shared services. That all falls under contractual obligations. Those are pre-negotiated, usually negotiated 3 or 5 years out, and so there's really not that much discretion in any given year on those. Our utilities, electricity, gas, fuel for the vehicles, the heating bills, the water bills, all that, irrigation for fields, things like that, and then finally debt service. And then we attempt our best to pay for all of those appropriations with the following, which are fees and fines, whether that's coming through the court or whether it's fees for permits, licenses, those might be marriage licenses, food licenses, interest on money that we have in our accounts, state aid that we're getting. This year we're getting a very nominal increase to our state aid. I think, what was it, Debbie, $7,000? $4,000 increase in state aid. So that doesn't do much to help us. Grants, and we pursue every possible grant opportunity that we can. What close observers of the budget and budget documents will see is that grants actually show up on both your appropriations and your revenues. But that's one way of getting things done without paying for it through taxes. And some other miscellaneous revenues that come in, whether it's leases, things that we're getting paid for, small revenue. But that revenue does not add up to all of the appropriations, and that's where it's made up, the balance is made up for with taxes. So this is, okay, so this is an overview. Why does it keep doing that? Okay. This is the budget overview. It's a little snapshot of the budget. This year, the headline is that the tax rate is virtually flat. As you'll see down at the bottom, these are rounded because it could go out for many, many decimals, but it's about 0.32, which is the same as last year and the year before that. There you'll see what I was talking about is our appropriations. That's $9.4 million in appropriations for municipal purposes. That's to fund all the things I'll talk about and all the things that were on the slide before. Our anticipated revenue is about 6.8. That's again, the other column that I was talking about on the slide before. So the balance that's left for us to have to raise by taxation is the $11.2 million. And you distribute that over your net valuation taxable, which is what is commonly referred to as, quote, your tax base, what the value of all the properties in the town are worth, and that's how you come up with the tax rate. So we're still managing to do all those things despite all the challenges, but because we also have a healthy tax base, and we're doing well in terms of how we're budgeting and how we've been spending even after we budget to make sure that our fund balance is replenished, we're able to keep that municipal tax rate at 0.32. So what are you getting for all of that? This is what you pay for with just about 17 cents of every dollar that you pay in taxes. As you'll see, there's a very extensive list. I went over this last year, but I do think it's important to mention and to demonstrate that we are operating in a very lean manner, very efficient manner, to be able to do all of that with just 17 cents for every dollar. Everything from storm cleanup and snow removal to the outstanding police protection, the great job our DPW does, all the way to subsidizing our fire departments, the 2 volunteer fire departments, our first aid squad, our senior center, and also to the library as well. So we are doing quite a bit with your dollar. These are the movers and shakers, as I like to call them, the top 7 movers and shakers, because these are the largest single chunks of the budget. And you have an option here to compare them to 2023 and see what that total difference is. But right there, you'll see a difference in $282,000. That's an increase in just these 7 items. Again, pensions and Social Security, that's the big driver. Insurance, that also went up quite a bit. And the debt payments is the other large amount, paying principal and interest on past debt. Fortunately, we lucked out this year with the decrease in our utility costs as things stabilize in the global economy and the commodity sector, and you see that impact very clearly here. We also last year, in anticipation of this year, also did a reverse energy auction for our electricity bills for a portion of what we pay for in our municipal properties. So that helped also with a reduction. So right there, you'll see that subtotal is 13.4 million, and when you're looking at our total appropriations, as I mentioned before, is about 19.5, right? That's only leaving about 6 million in discretionary spending. I would say sort of discretionary in the sense that things that we can try to move the needle on a year-to-year basis. I talked before about the surplus. That's what we say is the fund balance, but commonly referred to as a surplus by the public. You'll see in the 2024 column that we are using about 3.5 million from the fund balance this year. That is consistent with where it's been in the last few years. However, because of a good prior 2 years, our fund balance has grown, and because of our discipline in terms of not using more than we should, and appropriating correctly and also estimating our revenues correctly, we're seeing an increase to our fund balance this year, and so that will give us a balance at the end of the year of 2.3 million. Down at the bottom, you'll see a calculation, the 10% and 15%. That's the township's adopted fund balance policy on where that balance should be, but it's also in keeping with, as I mentioned before, best practices and recommendations from financial advisors. So we are right there in the middle of that 10 to 15% of our total expenditures. So it's a good place to be, and we want to stay there for the future. There we go. Just recapping again the budget, if anybody wants to see that one more time. But the highlight here is, again, pretty much a tax rate. I apologize, this should not say tax reduction, it should just say tax rate. Maintaining the services of the township, no service cuts, improved fund balance, and continued capital improvements. And then finally, the sewer utility. This falls out of the township's operating budget because the sewer utility is just that. It's a finance term calling it a utility, meaning that it's self-liquidating. Its appropriations and its revenues have to cover the appropriations. This does not hit the taxpayers in their tax bill. We're seeing a nearly $2,000 increase over last year's expenditures, appropriations. So we did a really thorough analysis again of the real costs. The challenge has been costs of chemicals are increasing. People might see that at home with their pool, but that affects us too, whether it's chlorine and other materials that the sewer utility needs in order to process the waste that comes through the plant and to treat it and make sure that it's compliant with DEP regulations. For the benefit of the public, that's manned and staffed by 6 dedicated full-time employees, but the administrative staff is shared by the rest of the municipality. Debt service for the utilities at about $588,000, and the revenue to pay for all this comes from what's known as our rents. That's the sewer utility payments that the public makes. And that's it for the 2024 municipal budget in an overview. Any questions?
Wonderful, thank you. I want to, thank our CFO and our administrator and the team and our finance committee, our incoming finance committee, for all your work on this. This is, there's a lot of pressure coming up on the budget, and there's been a lot of pressure on the budget, and you guys really worked hard to keep things. We're just in a great situation. You couldn't ask for a better situation. Flat tax, surplus is improving, and we're maintaining our services. So I think we're in pretty good shape.
Major capital investments.
And major capital investments, and not, we're keeping the debt.
Yes.
Yeah, the debt down, but I'm not sure how long that's going to last, given the 2 fire trucks and everything else that's got to get done. Any questions, comments? Wonderful. So resolution.
So we'll do a resolution at the next meeting, if the budget, as I talked about it, and we'll send out the budget documents, Debbie's finalizing those with our auditors, we'll send those out to the full committee for your review, but as soon as possible, Debbie, when do you think we could get that to the governing body?
Hopefully sometime next week.
Okay, so it gives you some time before the the end of March, the March 26th meeting. We'd
Okay.
introduce then.
Then we introduce, okay,
We
for some
introduce
reason I
them.
thought you said that you wanted to introduce tonight.
No, I'm sorry, this was the presentation, but there would be an introduction resolution at the next meeting.
Wonderful. Do we want to finish out the topic of finance while we're on it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Debbie, was there anything else you wanted to add on this? Okay. Thank you again for all your hard work on that.
yes.
Thank you, Dave.
So on finance, we talked about the resolution for the budget introduction. That's done by resolution but treated as an ordinance. We have the cap bank ordinance that we are looking to introduce. We are not using anything from our cap bank this year, which is great, but this budget does help us towards building that cap bank back up. It had been depleted once, and I think this was in 2022, right? It was depleted in 2022, was not replenished in 2022. In 2023, the governing body finally gave us the authority to build that back up. We want to continue that this year with building up that cap bank, but we're not anticipating and planning to use it. Any questions on that? Okay. And then we do have a resolution for temporary budget appropriations because the budget will not be adopted until the end of April. The initial temporary budget would need to be extended to cover us through the end of the month of April. And that way we're good there, and then once the budget's adopted in April, that will then override and we should be fine. There's a more routine resolution, canceling overpayment of some sewer assessments. Any questions there? And then finally, a resolution to certify LoSAP eligibility. So we did have a number of volunteers. For those that don't know, LoSAP is the Length of Service Award Program. It's a way to thank the volunteers, essentially like a mini retirement type of an account. We contribute on their behalf if they meet certain criteria. So it's a reward for the volunteers for all their hard work, and it's a small investment that we make, but we have to certify their eligibility based on reports that the departments, this is our volunteer fire departments and our first aid squad. So Debbie included a list of those that she got from the departments. With the agenda update this morning, you got the sample resolution for 2023, so we would update that for 2024.
And that's a standard resolution we do every year to update.
Any questions on those? All right. Debbie also submitted a report. It's largely a budget status report, though, on a temporary budget. So keep in mind that it's not as meaningful until we adopt the budget, but it does give you an idea of what spending is like this so far up till this month. If you have any questions, Debbie can answer those.
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
The energy tax receipts, because I've been asking people about this. So for 2024, it was up 4,000 last year plus another 4,000.
It went up last year. I don't know the exact figure from last year, but it went up another 4,000 this year. So the last 2 years, we had very small increases. So they're giving.
I thought I heard it doubled at the state level. I'm wondering where our money is. Yeah, I'll have to find out more about that. Okay. Thank you. I think I'm good.
Good, thank you, Debbie. You're going back to the office now, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Life in an account.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want to move on to administration?
Sure. So take it from the top and go
Sure.
down? All right. So we are, first one, bidding for public transportation. That one is something we discussed at the last meeting with respect to providing public transportation for residents of the future affordable housing development over at 522 Southern Boulevard. As part of the settlement, the developers agreement, and our obligations under the tax credit applications, We have to ensure access to public transportation for residents there. So Tiana is preparing the bid specifications for that. I'm also looking at one other option as an alternative. If that doesn't pan out, then the next meeting we'd be needing a resolution from the governing body to authorize the public bidding. Any questions there? We also have earmarked an ordinance for land sale. That is for River Road, where there's been some negotiations ongoing. We've discussed that in executive session, but we're earmarking that for the next meeting if all goes well with the other parties in the negotiation there. Any questions? Okay, and then a resolution reaffirming our anti-idling policies is requested by the Environmental Commission. They are a group of outstanding volunteers that is working to recertification for sustainable Jersey. So, they've been going through a lot of actions and efforts that get us points in order for us to meet different levels of certification. This is just one of those, along with the next item, which is our natural resources inventory. That also requires a resolution setting the process by which we update the natural resources inventory. So those two items, we're hoping to have those on for the agenda for the next meeting, if there are no objections.
If you can refresh my memory, the NRI is part of the master plan.
It is.
Okay.
Greg, John, and I did some digging, and we did find it, and Greg's updated the website, and so it's listed under the master plan, but there have been minutes, historical minutes, and evidence that the NRI was incorporated into the master plan by the planning board. So check there, and we are working on helping the Environmental Commission with getting a database from the state, which would help also. But they're still, whether they are able, what I'm hearing is they're not going to necessarily be able to incorporate the NRI for this certification round, but there are still actions that we need to take anyways to update and best practices with respect to an NRI. So I think we still want to pursue those, even if they can't get the points for it this year.
Does the planning board need to be involved in the update?
So first, what would need to happen is we would set this. The resolution would set the process by which the NRI is updated, essentially setting funds for the Environmental Commission. Maybe it's hiring another contractor. Then the NRI gets updated. They would present that to the planning board. Then the planning board would review that and do an update. Vote to actually update the master plan to incorporate those changes under the NRI.
Okay.
If I understand correctly, which may not be the case, the NRI last was updated in 2014, and it needs to be a 10-year update. Is that correct? And then, as it has an implication for the planning board is 17 to 27, as I understand. Is that correct? For the master plan.
For the master
I'm
plan.
talking about. And so this then becomes part of not the big part, but a part of the master plan, so it would be helpful to the planning board to have this accomplished.
Yes.
Great.
So in 2014 was when it was adopted as a part of the master plan.
Yes.
And if anyone at home is looking for it on the website, the main posting of the NRI is on the Environmental Commission page. But in the master plan section, I created a link there so that way people can see the meat and potatoes of it. And there's also a link to the Environmental Commission page, so that way people can see the full NRI.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
Any questions under admin?
I think we're good.
Okay. No legislation for the clerk, but you did provide his report. Any questions for him there? Okay. Construction, the one resolution, that's to confirm the appointment of a building inspector. That building inspector actually should be starting, I think, later this week or early next week. But that will help our construction official with being able to focus a little bit more on plan reviews and have an inspector out in the field, reviewing the actual work for the public. He submitted his report as well. Any questions on that? Okay. Engineering, We've got 2 items under legislation, an authorization to bid, that's for the water pollution control, transfer switch and VFD replacement project. Committeeman, remember we studied that one?
Variable frequency drives, not my
Right?
my
You
makeup.
hear VFD once and now it shows up every single time. So that is an authorization to bid. That's some electrical work for the WPC. It'll improve some reliability there as well. I think it's pretty critical. So, and we've got the funds for that. Any questions or concerns on that? Okay. And then Pine Street, that project from 2023, that was a repaving project. There were some issues there, drainage issues, and so the contractor and John Rushke, our engineer, have been going back and forth to resolve those, and so there's a change order here to accomplish and finally close out that project.
And that was an extension of a main.
Yeah, so there were some
Like-
issues with access on a property and connecting to
Catch basin.
the catch basin, exactly. So John looked at a couple different options. He wanted to explore both, make sure that, you know, whichever option he's choosing won't impact anything downstream, but also, you know, we had a private property owner that was giving us a little bit of a hard time with access onto his property, which is not required, but, so that's why it took a little bit long and why it's been sitting out there. But it's been all resolved now, and we just need that change order for the contractor to finish.
And that's covered by the grant funds, though, the
Correct.
change order.
Yep. John also provided a report. Any questions on that? Okay. I think actually there was one thing I wanted to highlight from his report. Let me pull it up for a second.
Nashville, Hillside.
No, actually, his notes were on the transfer switch. I just wanted to make sure that you all saw that there, which we talked about. That was that authorization to bid. That was in his report. If anybody had questions.
Mhm.
All right. Moving on, finance. We talked about that. Police resolution for the purchase of 2 vehicles. That one we had put in the request to the manufacturer last year for those. It takes time by the time you request them from the manufacturer until they get delivery, and so we need a resolution to actually purchase those vehicles. It would be under a state contract, so we're getting some good pricing there, and don't need to go through the procurement process, the bidding process, but does require governing body action. We are also recommending an ordinance to repeal one of our ordinances. I was doing some research on, I forget what it was, I think something related to OEM, and I noticed in there that we had an ordinance on emergency dispatch with Harding. Something that hasn't been done in a while. We got out of business a while ago, but the ordinance on the books was repealed, so just as a cleanup, I think we should take that out. And throughout the year, you'll probably hear a few more of those. Greg and I have talked about, you know, doing a review of the codified ordinances to see what we can clean up, because there is quite a bit of stuff that's been outdated in there. And then finally, another ordinance to amend chapter 7, section 30 of our mid-block crosswalks ordinance. There were some documents included with your agenda packet on that. Any discussion on those, or is that okay for TNN to work with John and the chief on amending?
I did have questions. I
Yeah.
apologize for not sending those in
No.
advance.
I will try my best to answer them.
Yeah, and it's fine, I can always follow up afterwards. So, it was very confusing.
Okay.
In terms of what is being, are they net looking to, is this just a documentation thing? Like, there was one piece that looked like they were actually gonna remove some crosswalks.
Right, so it's hard for the police department to enforce and write summonses for violations of our ordinances when they don't actually have the ordinance. Because if it gets to court, they're like, well, it's not listed here as a mid-block crosswalk, so if a driver failed to yield to a pedestrian, for example, or something happened there, it's technically not a crosswalk in our ordinances. So that, it came about because the chief had noticed, and over the years, prior to my arrival, there were a lot of crosswalks that were just added mid-block. you know, they were like, oh, we wanna make this safe for kids, and they just tell DPW, go ahead and paint it there, but it never actually was effectuated by an engineering study or even an amendment of our ordinances. So that's kinda how this came about. So the chief and Rich, sent that list of what we currently are aware of to John. John reviewed that list, reviewed a couple others, and so the chief is recommending a number of mid-block crosswalks be added because they're not in our ordinances. And then John, as part of his review, noticed that there were some crosswalks in our ordinances where there is not actually a mid-block crosswalk, or it's incorrectly classified as a mid-block crosswalk where it should not be. So that's where the cleanup is going to be. It'll be adding crosswalks that should be added and then removing some that don't exist.
So just so I'm clear, when we're removing, it's a paper
Paper
removal, there's no actual crosswalks.
Correct.
That was the confusion.
Yep.
Great. I'm good, thank you.
All good on that one? Okay. Public Works, we've got 2 retirements. One retirement from WPC and the other one from Public Works. 2 outstanding employees who have been doing a great job for us, but for them it's time to move on, and so they put in their notice of retirement. I think at the next meeting, or the meeting after that, Mayor, you know, if it's okay, we'll have them here and recognize them publicly upon their retirement for their many years of service to the township.
Okay, great.
We also have 2 resolutions for the purchase of chemicals for the water pollution control for our sewer treatment plant. Those are chemicals that because the cost has gone up, the aggregate price has increased beyond the threshold of what is permitted for Debbie and myself to approve administratively. They require a resolution by the governing body to approve that increased pricing. They're going to be purchased under co-ops, so it just needs resolutions from the governing body to authorize that purchase. And Rich sent in his report. Any questions there? I do want to recognize Rich also for his efforts to secure a grant. It's a reimbursement grant from the state. I think Greg got an email about it from the state, forwarded along to me, reviewed it with Rich, and Rich promptly put in for it. And what that is, it's a grant for lanternfly treatment reimbursement. It's been an issue that the state's been trying to get a handle on for quite a bit, but they're, you know, through this program, they're allowing municipalities to aggressively pursue lanternfly treatment and then get a reimbursement. I forget how much it is. I want to say maybe 20,000. Do you know, Greg, off the top of your head? It's a good amount of money. Yeah. So kudos to Rich for doing a good job with that application and getting us some money.
What is a lanternfly treatment?
Lanternflies.
Without killing everything.
What's that?
Without killing everything.
So there is some treatment, like chemical treatment,
They've
that
come
they
up with
recommend,
something?
that the state
Okay.
recommends, but there are also some tree species that are more susceptible, and so they recommend removal of those
Oh, okay,
trees.
so it's continuing removal of those trees.
Yes, so it's
Okay.
a combination of either a certain chemical treatment and or tree removal.
Yeah, no, that I understand,
Yep.
okay, gotcha.
And then recreation, recreation tax collector, tax assessor, 3 reports, no legislative action. Any questions on either of those?
Tax assessor,
Yes.
the county mandated reval, did we put money in this year's budget or?
So that one is gonna, let me just say one thing real quick. That presentation, we're publishing it on the website. If it's not today, tomorrow it'll be published. Presentation of the timeline. The money for this year would be just for the tax map updates. So we did put some money in the budget for that this year. I've been working with John and another firm and our tax assessor to get a better handle on that because the county used to do them, apparently. The borough, years ago, started this through the county. The county was doing tax map updates and helping the towns with that. They no longer do it because it turned out the cost was a lot higher than they were expecting and they were taking a big loss. So the initial estimate that I got was $250,000 when we were originally thinking somewhere along the lines of $50,000.
For updating the tax.
For updating tax maps, because they have to be updated to certain standards because they have to get state approval. It's not just a simple, because we could do tax map updates, but when they go for state approval, they have to meet a different standard. But the initial proposal also included a lot more tech, GIS mapping, and making sure that everything was fully digital, not just a digital version of a analog document. And this is actually all digital. That would be the $250,000 version. I went back to John and asked if he could get us a proposal for what would be sort of the bare minimum, and that's where now we're looking at $75,000. So I put in the budget about $50,000 for it, but at some point we've got to discuss a special emergency appropriation because we're going to need to have money set aside for the bidding for the full services of the reval. And so then the question goes, do we want to just lump all of them together, or break that up and pay some of it out of operating and then do the rest as a special emergency appropriation? So we've got some money in there now, but that's something that we can continue that conversation later on.
Okay.
That's it for reports.
Is that everything? Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little break now.
Yeah.
I am going to open our second hearing of citizens, and the same rules apply. Anyone online?
We do not have any hands raised.
Thank you. Any questions?
I gotta go.
Okay, then we will close the hearing of citizens. We don't need executive session, we covered everything? Okay.
Covered everything.
So I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Can I have a
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Mayor?
Aye.
Mayor? No.
Oh,
Did you want to go over the Oprah bill? I know you had asked about the Oprah legislation.
oh, I
The
did.
changes, apologies.
Can we reopen? I think we just voted.
I mean, we could,
Or we can
we
talk
just
about
do
it
it
next
next
time?
month, next meeting.
Yeah,
Tiana could send an update even by email.
yeah, I could do that.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
Thank you, I forgot to.
Subject to change in any-
Wonderful, thank you. We are done.